Hello friends, welcome back to a new yarn dyeing video. Today when this video goes live, it is April 23rd, which is World Book Day. And being a writer, an author, and a lover of stories of all kinds, I do of course have to do something in that vein. So my plan for this week is to dye on this yarn. This is a DK Superwash Merino, and what I'm going to make is a colorway that reminds me of one of my favorite books, or actually a favorite book series that I read when I was a little girl. Because when I grew up, we had this book series at home. I think it was like 10 books of fairy tales from all over the world, and it was called The World's Most Beautiful Fairy Tales, but in Norwegian. So in Norwegian it would be Verdens vakreste äventyr. And I've been looking for those books secondhand ever since. You can find them, but not with the same cover that they had. I think that was the first edition, actually. I'll show you a picture, actually. I'll insert that here. This is what they look like. And it is this beautiful dark blue cover with a print in gold. And that is what I'm going to recreate today, because I absolutely love those books. It was, like I said, it was fairy tales from all over the world, and the stories were, well, it was a bit different. Some of them had like verses and rhymes and shorter stories, but there were also a lot of fairy tales from all over the world, and those were printed in Norwegian and English as well. So that's kind of where I really started to learn to read English as a little girl. I can't have been more than 4 or 5, 6 years old, something like that. And like I said, I love them. I would give pretty much anything to have those books today, but I haven't been able to find them, not with that cover at least. So that's what I'm attempting to do this week. We're going to dye a dark blue colorway with sprinkles of gold. That's the plan. But first off, we have to start by soaking the yarn.
You got me feeling good, right by your side. Lost in every move, riding down your spine.
First thing we're going to do is to open up these skeins, like so. And I'm adding a zip tie to each of them. I'm use reusable zip ties, so I can open them again. Better for the environment. This helps me to grab the skein while dyeing and rinsing and all that. So that's what we're starting with. There's the second skein. And the third one. We're doing 3 skeins today. And there we go. Next, we are soaking them. I have this plastic tub, and I'm going to add a little bit of citric acid. You don't need to do this at this point, really. You can just add when you dye it, but I prefer to do a little bit in the soaking water and a little bit when I'm dyeing. And next, we are adding in water. I've got 2 of these. They hold 2 liters each of cold water. So I'm just adding that in. There we go. And then we have 4 liters of water. And I'm grabbing the yarn by the zip ties, like so. And we're just going to place it in the water. And I'm pushing it down gently, just to make sure everything gets soaked. You want the yarn to be wet all through. If it isn't wet, it's not going to, the dye is not going to stick. There we are. Now we're going to let that sit for about half an hour to soak, and then we'll be ready to dye. Right, let's get ready to rumble. We have our soaking yarn. We have the canteen that I'm going to dye in. This is my dyes and other equipment. And I got a couple of cups of water in this one. I'll get back to that. First off, what we need, aside from soaked yarn, don't worry, my stove is absolutely cold, so it's safe to put the soaking tub there. It is not going to melt, and it's not something I usually do. I just try to get everything on camera here. So, first off, face mask, as always. These yarn dyes are a very, very fine powder that you do not want to inhale, so always use a mask. I got a pair of gloves. I've got an old empty yogurt tub that I just put some cold clean water in and a spoon so that I can poke the yarn while I'm dyeing it. Got my little mixer thingy that I use to dissolve the dye in water. We got a teaspoon, which we'll be using for this, which will be like the main color, and this is Jacquard Acid Dyes Navy Blue. Show you. It's really, really dark. And for the gold speckles, I'm going to use Jacquard Acid Dye in Gold Ochre. It's my plan. So, what we're going to do here is I'm going to grab this measuring cup and I'm going to add in some of the navy dye and dissolve it in that one, and then I'm going to fill it up to 2 liters. So that's what we're doing first. Put that aside. Putting the mask on, very important. And then we grab the dye. Very hard to see. Can you see now, maybe? And I'm grabbing quite a lot. Like so, a teaspoonful. Very hard to see with this dark color. And I'm adding it in the measuring cup. And I'm going to use my little whisker to dissolve it. I don't know if you can see, there's like lumps of dye on the surface. And you want it to dissolve completely. My countertop is black, so it might be difficult to see, but it's very, very dark. Almost looks black. Like so. And we're adding in some more water. And we're working with cold water the whole time. I'm just rinsing the whisker. And we're adding in a couple of liters of water. There we are. You can see it almost looks dark purple, but we shall see. All right, so far so good. Next up, we are going to transfer the soaked yarn into the pan that we're dyeing in, and then we can get going. So let me move the camera first, and I'll be right back. Before I transfer the soaked yarn, I'm adding like a small tablespoon of citric acid into the pan as well. I also had some in the soaking water, and like I said, you can really just use it when you're dyeing. You don't really need it in the soaking water. It's just my preference. Let's squeeze out some of the water from the skein, mostly to not make a mess when I'm transferring. And the third one. kind of hair on my hand. Okay, there we are. I'm gonna move you a bit again, and we're ready to dye. All right, here's the plan. First, I'm going to grab each skein and twist it slightly. Maybe a little more, like so. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to be speckling with the gold color, and I want to get speckles all around the skein and not just on one side. So let's see, I think we need a little more on that one. There we go. I'm going to rinse my hand because I'm full of citric acid. Okay. Next up, we are adding some dye. We are also going to turn on the stove, like so. I'm going in between. For starters. Go. So I'm adding in about an extra liter of water. Just keeping that residue, the left tiny speckles of dye that are left, in case I need to add a little bit more. Let me turn on the fan as well. Hope it isn't too loud on camera. Clean up my mess here. This is a very hefty dye. All right, so we're just going to let that start heating up a bit, and then we'll be adding some gold. And I can use a spoon to poke the yarn. Where needed. I might have wound this one a little tight. If you wound it too tight, it's not going to, the dye is not going to penetrate, but we'll see. It's already starting to heat up in this end. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to kick the camera. And also over here, so we're going to turn down the heat a bit. Because it's not supposed to boil, you just want it to get hot. Looks very nice. And I'm moving the pan around a little bit to make sure it gets hot everywhere. So I'm going to continue to let it heat up, and I'll get back to you when it's time to add the gold. Starting to heat up properly. I'm sure you can see the steam coming off it. And next we are going to add in the gold ochre. And I'm doing this by just grabbing some on a teaspoon, adding it to my hand. And I'm just going to use my fingers to sprinkle it, and use a glove, otherwise the dye will stick awfully to your hands. Especially important if you're dyeing with turquoise. That stuff, it's everywhere. So pretty. It's my favorite color of all, actually. But oh my. Grab a little bit more. There we are. And I'm just going to let it sit. I'm not going to touch it too much, because I don't want the dark color to bleed too much into the gold. I'm hoping to be able to keep it like this. And we'll see how much we're able to exhaust the navy blue. I did use a lot of it, so we may not be able to do that entirely, but we shall see. So I'm gonna continue to let this just soak up as much dye as possible, and we'll check it in a bit. In order to make use of the steam as well, I have added a lid to my pan. I just rinsed it, that's why it's wet all over. So I'm going to let that sit on the pan for a little bit to make sure that the golden dye sets as well. And we're just gonna wait. Let's see what happens. I am going to try something because I want to get more of the white to disappear. So I've grabbed a measuring cup with just only water. I'm just going to add that to the yellow spots very carefully. I don't want to add too much water into the pan. I'm quite happy with the amount I've got at the moment. It is dissolving a little bit more, I think. Oops, that's a little much. I don't mind there being a little bit of white as well. I think that could actually be quite cool. There we are. Not gonna add any more water to the pan now. I want to keep these golden parts elevated from the rest of the water. Otherwise the blue will just overtake the golden. So we're just going to continue to let it sit and to exhaust as much of the blue dye as we can, and we'll see. The dye is starting to exhaust. I can see the bottom of the pan here, and I'm braving to open up a little bit in the twists here. I got some more color along the edge here in the front, so I'm adding in. Like I said, I don't mind there being some white in between, but I don't want it to be too much either. So I'm just poking the yarn, opening up. As you can see, it's just a little lighter inside. And we're just moving some dye around. Just checking that we get some in between as well. There we got some white. Has been twisted a little harder. And I think this is going to be very pretty. Different types of blues and maybe a little bit of purple. This dye is now so diluted, it's mostly purple. So this is something to keep in mind when you're twisting the yarn. You will have some lighter parts. And I'm not too worried about poking about here now, because as you can see, there's almost no dye left in the dye bath now. And what is left is so light it's not going to overtake the gold. As you can see, it's almost completely exhausted. So I'm actually going to stop the process there, or rather I'm going to turn off the stove, because what little is left will continue to exhaust as it cools down. So I'm going to set the pan aside, just let it cool down. We need to let it cool down completely before rinsing it. If we don't do that, we will shock the yarn. So I'm just going to set it aside and let it cool, and I will rinse it once it has cooled down. The yarn has cooled off completely, and we're going to rinse it. I'm going to be using my soak. This is my favorite. You don't have to have that to rinse your yarn. You can use dish soap, whatever you got handy. I'm just squirting in a little bit of that. And we're adding some cold water. So that we can rinse our yarn. And while the water is being added, I'm going to squeeze out some of the excess water of this skein, mostly so that I don't make a mess when I transfer. That's fine. And the other one, and you don't wring the yarn, just squeeze the water out. And the last one. There we are. Let me move the camera a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. There we are. I'm just going to grab one of the zip ties. I'm making sure to rinse the zip ties as well, because there might be dye left on the zip tie as well. Let me get rid of that light. In which case, you don't want to spread that everywhere. So make sure you rinse that too. And I'm squeezing out water. Now, since I'm using soak, I only have to do this once. I will, however, rinse my yarn twice. Again, just personal preference. There we go. And squeezing out the water. I did have some excess dye here. I don't know if you can see that. The water is somewhat blue. This is also a very powerful color. And there may also have been dye caught in the zip tie of the skeins. There we go. Quite a lot of blue in the water, but at the same time it doesn't take a lot, since the dye is so powerful. Can you tell my hands are blue? I don't know if you can see it on camera. Maybe I can do a avatar cosplay later. So I'm going to rinse this one more time, and then we're going to hang it to dry.
You got me feeling good, right about your side. Lost in every move, writing down your smile. Baby, hold me tight, let me trace your lies.
Are you ready for the finished object? How about that? I'm very happy with how this turned out. There's some lighter pieces in, which I think is actually really nice. It gives it more life. But you also have the dark blue, the navy blue, and we got the gold speckles in here. Really, really beautiful. And the yarn has bloomed so much after rinsing and drying. So now the question is, what am I going to make of it? I don't know yet. I don't have a plan for it just yet. I just know I'm in love, totally in love. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the video this week. I hope you got inspired. If you did, let me know. I'd love to see what you're making. If you're dyeing yarn yourself, leave a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. I will be making videos every week about yarn dyeing, so maybe there will be something in the future that'll inspire you. Who knows? But yeah, that's it for this week. I'll see you next time. Bye.
You got me feeling good, right about your side. Lost in every move, writing down your smile. Baby, hold me tight, let me trace your lies. Keep it low, cause you're dropping it down.